Hello class, in the previous section you learned how to create a basic integer by using row operations that involve the pivot of a Tableau matrix. In this video I'm going to show you how to find a pivot of a Tableau matrix. Let's begin. So here is a Tableau matrix and we want to find the pivot. To do that, we need to first identify the objective function. The objective function that is being maximized is z is equal to 9 times x sub 1 plus x sub 2 plus 2 times x sub 3. And we got that objective function by identifying the coefficients in the bottom row. And according to the matrix, all variables in the objective function are currently non-basic, which means they all equal 0. This means that z is also 0 at this moment. So again, x sub 1, x sub 2, and x sub 3 are currently non-basic because there are more than one non-zero entries in each column. Okay, so let's go ahead and identify the pivot. To identify the pivot, it is important to determine two things. One, the term in the objective function that will affect the value of z the most. And two, the smallest value that the variable cannot exceed in the most influential term. All right, so let's start with the first bit of information right here. So the term that will affect the value of z the most is 9 times x sub 1, because 9 is the largest coefficient of the objective function. Therefore, the pivot will be located in the first column, which is the column that represents the coefficients of the variable x sub 1. Notice that the first column has the most negative indicator, which in this case is negative 9. Okay, so let's take a look at the first column of this matrix. Here are all the coefficients of x sub 1, and negative 9 is the most negative indicator, so the pivot will be located in the first column. Now for the second bit of information. We want to figure out what number x sub 1 cannot exceed in this term. So what we're going to do is the following. To find the smallest value x sub 1 cannot exceed, divide each number from the far right column by the corresponding number from the column with the most negative indicator, which again in this case is negative 9. All right, so here we go. We're going to take the first entry in the far rightmost column and divide it by 3. So x sub 1 is equal to 54 divided by 3, which is equal to 18. Next, we're going to take 48 and divide it by 6. So x sub 1 is equal to 48 divided by 6, which is 8. So 8 is less than 18. So row 2 has the smallest ratio. And how do we find the pivot from all of this information? So the pivot will be where the column with the most negative indicator intersects with the row with the smallest ratio. All right, so let's go back to the matrix. Here is the row with the smallest ratio. Here is the column with the most negative indicator. And the two intersect right at that 6. So in this case, the pivot of this Tableau matrix is the 6. So the pivot is the 6 in the first row, sorry, not the first row, in the first column, second row.